Good morning, everybody. We're waiting for a few more participants to be able to join in, and then we will start. Please let me know if everybody can hear me well. Pradeep, Jaskaran, Casey, all of you, are you able to hear me? Great, Aashish, I will just give you the host rights for some time and we can test your mic meanwhile.
Hello. Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
India's unsung heroes are honored by heroes event.
This 100 and like to dedicate this one is for you for making all the sacrifices.
And the little master dedicates his 100 sons to his big brother Aashish, saying he can now get on with his day. But our top focus this Sunday, Anya is back. The social activist will be holding a one-day fast in the capital today, protesting the death of Madhya Pradesh IPS officer Narendra Kumar. Anya is demanding protection for whistleblowers, a portion that has been removed from the final version of the low-file bill drafted by the government. The families of Narendra Kumar and other murdered whistleblowers like S. Manjunath and Amit You don't think
Can everybody hear me now? Hello? Wonderful. Wonderful. So let's just get started. Good morning, everybody. We have Mr. Aashish Somaiyaa with us. He is today going to take a Guru Talk with you, and he is going to talk on the topic recent trends in sales and relationship management. As I earlier said to remain with the details of Mr. Aashish Somaiyaa. Mr. Aashish Somaiyaa is a young leader, and very exemplary and young leader who's been a big achiever so far. He is the head of retail business in ICICI Prudential, and he's handled multiple senior leadership roles in ICICI as well as in AXA Bharati. Right, so it gives me great pleasure to invite and introduce Mr. Aashish Somaiyaa to you, who's now going to start talking to you about the recent trends in sales and relationship management. Sales and relationship management, we all know, go hand in hand. Go hand in hand, and one helps the other. Right, so it's not about just selling, but it's also about maintaining great customer relationships, which means we have more business and more customers. We all know that one good customer experience is going to bring us a lot more customers. So Mr. Aashish Somaiyaa is going to talk more about this recent trends in sales and relationship management, and him being a very young and very successful today's leader, he would give us a recent trend in sales and relationship management. Now, some of the technical things that I would like to, and the agenda that I would like to tell the participants is: one, if you're not able to hear clearly, it could be a problem with your internet connection. We always suggest that you have at least a 512 kbps speed of high-speed connection. Secondly, please mute yourself. I see a lot of people haven't muted yourself. If you unmute yourself and speak into the mic, that's going to disturb the session greatly. So please keep yourself unmuted. Now, the last 20 minutes of the session after Mr. Aashish has spoken to us will be dedicated for question and answer. You can chat in your questions. You can put in your questions into the chat box. Now, Mr. Aashish will look at your chat questions in the chat box, and he will answer in the order of priority, one at a time. I hope that is clear. Somebody has activated your mic again. Please deactivate your mic, guys. This will cause a lot of disturbance during the session. If you keep your mic active, the background noise at your end will start disturbing the session. So please do not activate your mic. This will be a one-way online session with Mr. Aashish Somaiyaa speaking to you continuously. He will present the topic, and then at the end, the last 20 minutes, I repeat, will be dedicated for question and answer. The last 20 minutes will be dedicated for question and answer. All your questions, please put it into the chat box. Mr. Aashish Somaiyaa will start answering the questions in the last 20 minutes in the order. Do not speak into the mic to ask your questions. Simply type it into the chat box. Mr. Aashish will look into the chat box, and then you would be able to answer your questions in the order of priority. All good? Are we good to start? Wonderful. Thanks, Adi. Thanks, Anupam. Thanks, Pradeep. Thanks, Nimesh. Thanks, everybody. Let's get started. I'm going to hand over the session to Mr. Aashish. He's going to take us through his presentation and share his best experiences in sales and relationship management. And I hope you guys will take a lot of inputs from this session and will be able to employ it in your workplace, in your education, etc. Right? Great. Mr. Aashish, I will hand over the session to you. I'm going to pass on the host rights to you.
Hi, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay, can you hear me? Okay, great. So morning everyone. I would like to thank first of all Avagma and 24/7 Learning for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you. I'm sure you have busy lives, and I'm sure you have your own weekends, and I think Sunday morning. I'm happy to see this kind of participation. It's an honor and a privilege to speak to all of you. So as you've been briefed, the session for today is recent trends in sales and relationship management. And what I do is, first of all, just kind of give a background of, because I believe that there will be people from different industries onto this session, and I am myself from financial services. A couple of disclaimers: I'm here in my personal capacity. I'm not representing my organization. I'm here to share my experiences, which I've gathered by working in different organizations. The second disclaimer, of course, like I said, is I'm sure there are people from different industries on this session, whereas I am myself from financial services. So I just kind of give you a background of what I do so that you can put into perspective what I'm talking. As far as the topic is concerned, sales and relationship management, well, that, if you really ask me, is an old-fashioned art, and I don't think that changes from industry to industry. I think that is more constant than anything else. But just to give you a perspective, I head retail business for ICICI Prudential Mutual Fund. I'm sure a lot of you might be investing in mutual funds. So our nature of business, when you talk of sales and relationship management, the nature of my business is to enable people to get financial advice, enable people to invest in mutual funds by dealing with different types of bankers, investment bankers, private bankers, wealth managers, agents, and variety of such people who give investment advice to the end customer. So basically, people like me and people in my team, I have a team of about 400 people. So people like me and the people in my team, it's our responsibility to manage relationships with different types of investment advisors in such a way that they recommend our products, our investment services to their investors. So that's the kind of background. As far as the topic itself is concerned, the first and most important point, I have been into sales for the last 12 years now. And just to give a perspective, if you move on to the third slide, that is a career in sales and relationship management. I have just kind of asked a simple question: who sells today? And the reason why I ask this question is because as part of my job, I many times go on to campuses and interview a lot of people. And typically, when there are, like for example, if there are technically qualified people, let us say people who are engineers, people who could be technically qualified in some other science. There are a lot of people who could be management graduates in finance. There are a lot of people who could be management graduates in marketing or in operations or whichever fields one may look at. Most people that I meet, youngsters specifically, most people that I meet and most youngsters that I meet typically tell me that they do not want to do a sales job. And the general perception is that, the perception of selling is the old-fashioned typical way of thinking, that people who sell are the people who actually go from door to door and they make cold calls and they try to attract customers, and these are the kind of perceptions people have. The second kind of perception that a lot of people do have is that when you talk about selling, it doesn't mean technical qualification. People generally think that when you're into selling, you're just into hard selling, and it's more into, you don't need to apply too much of your mind. You don't need your marketing and financial services or your engineering knowledge. And all that you need is just persistency, making door-to-door calls, meeting lots of people, making lots of phone calls. These are the kind of perceptions that people have about a career in selling. Whereas if you actually look at it in the last 15 to 20 years, like I'm speaking to you through this excellent piece of technology, and we all know that we live in the information age. And as far as the information age is concerned, what is happening is that in the past, let's say 20 years back, if I came to sell you a piece of equipment, let us say, let's say a DVD player. If I came to sell a DVD player to you, let us say about 15 years back, or at that point in time we had video cassette recorders. If someone came to sell you a VCR or DVD player 15 to 20 years back, the person would actually come and tell you what are the features, what kind of recording, what kind of media you can play on it, what movies you can watch on it, and what kind of how much recording it can do, how many hours it can go on, and all those kinds of things. So typically 20 years back, a salesperson's job was more like a walking, talking brochure, and all that you did was tell people, show them the product, tell them product features, tell them about the price of the product, tell them what the product can do, and that's it. So that is what the impression of selling was. Whereas if you actually look at it today, if someone wants to buy a DVD player, chances are that they've already gone to the website and they've already studied all the information that a brochure possibly could have been giving. They've already studied all the kind of information that a salesman 20 years old back would have actually come and told them. In reality, when you look at selling today, the information is already there with the customer. Selling today is advanced to such a level that it's not about giving information. If you are the kind of salesperson who just passes on information, then you are only a walking, talking brochure, nothing more. Today's salesperson is the kind of person who not only gives information which can be got from a website, but you also need to be able to relate your product to a consumer's requirements. You need to be able to compare your product with a variety of other alternatives. For example, 20 years back, all of us had only one choice when it came to buying the car. And pretty much all the information on that car could be gleaned by getting a brochure from the showroom. Whereas if you actually look at it today, if you want to buy a car, there are magazines, there are newspapers, there are internet websites, there are television programs. All of these give you all kinds of different comparisons as to what you should buy. And if you're a salesman in a car showroom now, your job is not about comparing brochures and comparing features. You actually need to be able to relate the client's requirement. You ask him, what kind of family do you have? How many people in your family? What are all those people? How many times do you go out with your family? Where do you travel? What distances do you travel? What kind of fuel efficiency do you need? So today, more than in the past, if you ask me 20-25 years back, a car showroom salesman could have been someone who was just a brochure salesman. Whereas actually, if you look at it today, more than any time in the past, the car salesman needs to be technically qualified. He needs to be able to compare with a variety of options, and at the same time, he also needs to actually relate. He also needs to actually relate the customer's requirement with the product that he has to offer. So the net point that I'm trying to make, like I'll give you an example. When I started selling mutual funds about 12 to 13 years back, just to give you a background, like I'm a chemical engineer and I've done management in finance. And I was probably among the first people in my industry, not in any industry, but in my industry, I was among the first people who I could say was technically qualified. So the net point that I'm trying to make is that the impression or perception that people have about a sales career, which used to be there 10, 15, 20 years back, is no more the same. The reason being simply that a salesman's job today is not about passing information or acting like a brochure. It's more about technical consulting. It's more about being technically qualified and relating your product's customers' requirements with the product that you have to offer. And the second important point, obviously, is that people have so many options. People have so many options that they actually need to compare all of those and then be able to move forward. Moving on to the next, today just because I had to come here and speak to all of you, while I do sales and relationship management is something which I do. Sales and relationship management is something which I do on a day-to-day basis. So not necessary that I need to prepare to come here and speak to all of you. But just out of inquisitiveness, before I came here for the session, what I did was I did an internet search on sales and relationship management. So you are free to do Google, and you can also do a search on sales and relationship management. I was just inquisitive to know that when I say recent trends, what is it that people are reading nowadays, and what is it that people think about this field? And I was quite amazed. I was really surprised. If you get onto Google and you do a search on these keywords, what you will find is that page after page after page is talking about CRM software, and it's talking about what kind of technology you can use in order to reach out to your customers. And I was quite flabbergasted because if you really ask me, selling and relationship management is not all about technology. All said and done, you can use variety of CRM softwares to capture information about your customers, to capture information about your sales data, to capture information about your clients' preferences. You can use all kinds of tools possible, but what you need to realize is that selling actually happens on ground when you're sitting in front of the customer. Whatever a CRM software actually captures is post facto. After having met the customer, when the customer speaks to you, when the customer buys your product, when the customer demands service from you, all the information that you gather is what you capture in the CRM software. But what we are missing out in this entire melee of customer relationship management and software and technology tools, what we are missing out is that the actual selling happens when the sales representative sits in front of the customer and actually convinces him. So I think that what used to be an old-fashioned art is getting lost somewhere in this entire melee about what kind of technological innovations one can do to manage client relationships better. So couple of important points to ponder. Is it an art? Can it really be taught? Can sales and relationship management be really taught? The interesting part is that all textbooks and all internet work on client relationship management or customer relationship management, all of it is about technology and software tools. Whereas in reality, if you want to learn sales and relationship management, those are not the textbooks that you read. What you really need to read are books which teach you the art of persuading other individuals. You know, a brochure can give information, but why do we need an intelligent, walking, talking salesperson who's technically qualified? Why do we need that person as a salesperson? I mean, if he's just going to give information, that could have been done by a brochure. But why do you need an individual to go across? An individual who can speak, who can walk, who can talk, and who can convince people. The reason why individuals are needed is because they need to work on the prospect's mind and they need to convince the prospect in their favor to look at their product in the right perspective. So what I feel is that technology is being overused to manage what is actually an old-fashioned art. Selling is all about coming across and convincing me to buy. And you know, I just happened to come across some very interesting data. While we actually push technology, we push internet, and we push variety of other tools in order to be able to sell more to our customers, there is a resounding kind of, you know, this is from some interesting survey that I found on the net. There is a resounding, verdict from customers that they prefer personal one-to-one contact. More than 70% customers, more than 70% of the weightage of what customers prefer, more than 70% of the weightage is given to one-on-one contact. And what is the reason? The reason is because people prefer personal interactions and people prefer to know who they are dealing with, and if there was a difficulty, they want to know who to go back to. Obviously, these are things, these are requirements which technology cannot satisfy. Similar other data, why customers need face-to-face interaction is because they want to develop trust in the person who is actually buying, who is actually selling. They want to develop trust with that person. They seek advice and they want to develop relationships over a period of time. So the whole point is that today, the recent trends, if you really ask me, recent trends actually suggest that a lot of technology is being used for selling and for relationship management. But if you look at customer data and if you look at surveys, basically what they say is that customers still prefer old-fashioned one-on-one selling. And what is old-fashioned one-on-one selling is just the art of persuasion. And there are books and books written on stuff like influencing people, on stuff like persuading other people in your favor, on stuff like telling a story to be able to sell. These are the kind of art. These are the kind of art that one needs to develop. So these are just some very interesting quotes. If you really ask me, the recent trends are more technology driven, whereas the quotes that I have picked speak more about selling as an art. So what does it say? If you would persuade, you must appeal to interest rather than intellect. So it's not all about giving technical information. It's not all about talking about how the product was created. It's more about persuading people to buy the product. The second important point, a lot of times salespeople get carried away with what kind of pricing, what kind of product technical specifications, etc. are available. Whereas research actually says that most decisions taken in business are taken for emotional reasons. This I am sure might come across as a shocker to a lot of people, but this is actually what research says, that a lot of decisions in business are taken for emotional reasons, and there is a reason, and there is some logical evidence of this as well. The logical evidence being that if ultimately when an organization is trying to sell something to another organization, or when an individual is trying to sell something to another individual, at any point in time, it very rarely happens that the buyer doesn't have enough opportunities or the buyer doesn't have enough options. Actually, in today's world, for every product and every service, the buyer it's like a buyer's market. There has been so much of innovation that anything that a buyer wants to buy, typically speaking, they have multiple options. Now, if the product is same, the pricing terms are same, the service is good, the brands are comparable, if everything is same, then ultimately the final decision a lot of times get taken because the guy who's buying is the one who wants to. The guy who's buying is probably influenced by the person sitting across the table. So the hardest lesson is that customer doesn't always make logic. The hardest lesson is that customer doesn't always make decisions for logical, let alone rational reasons. So typically speaking, clients do get influenced by emotional considerations. These are a couple of points that I've already covered, so I'm not going to. These are a couple of points that I've already covered, so I'm not going to elaborate further. Simple point is that historically the information was a challenge, whereas today actually we live in the age of information. Our customers already have all information, so selling is no more just about providing information. Selling is more consultative in nature, and selling needs more engagement with clients. Historically, selling was a transaction, and today a sale is the beginning of a new relationship, because and this is where of course the technological tools play a role, because we capture a lot of data from our clients right from the moment we meet them till the end of the product usage. So today a sale is the beginning of a relationship, and we tend to learn from our customers. This is just a comparison that I have drawn between transaction-led selling versus relationship-led selling. In a transaction-led sale, obviously the focus is on single sales, whereas in a relationship-led selling, the focus is on retaining the customer's loyalty. So I'm not going to read through the entire points. I'm sure it's right up there in front of you. But there are a couple of important things that you really need to focus on here. The second point is most critical, what I've been emphasizing on. With a transaction-led selling, the emphasis is merely on showcasing the product features, whereas in a relationship-led selling, the emphasis is on product benefits that are meaningful to the customer. It's not about going and telling someone, okay, I can do this, I can do that, and I can do 20 other things. It's all about telling the guy what will meet his or her requirement. The last point is also important. Quality is the concern of the production department, whereas when you talk about relationship-led selling, the entire organization needs to have a shared commitment. So the important point is tools are not enough. Everybody has tools. We are back to the era where the guy on the ground does the job. And like I've already highlighted, there is a huge difference between walking, talking brochures versus intelligent sales representatives. And of course, there is a subtle difference between information versus knowledge. The past was all about information-led selling. The current times that I'm living in, or we all are living in, and the future that we forecast is all going to be about knowledge-led selling. And when you look at information, information is all about presenting data. When you talk about knowledge, knowledge is about interpreting data in a way that it meets the client's requirements. The other important point, and this is where I'm sure India is a country. It's basically a country of Bollywood. And if you look at a typical Bollywood movie, I'm trying to draw some parallels about how selling in the new world can happen. if you go and tell a client, okay, this is my product and this is what you can use, this is my product and this is my, this is what you can use it for, it comes across as a pretty, dull and drab kind of communication. Whereas if you compare with Bollywood, typically how does Bollywood get all of us? Let's assume a movie is a product, and let's see how a director gets all of us emotionally engaged with his movie. Typically speaking, every Bollywood movie starts with a challenge. Either two brothers getting separated or somebody doing injustice to the hero. Some such challenge actually comes up. In the challenge, they show the protagonist going through so much that you get an emotional connect with this protagonist. And then through most part of the movie, you actually see the protagonist kind of struggling to get his rights, struggling to take revenge, struggling to prove the world that he is right and the world is wrong. These kind of emotional connects or hooks are actually developed through the movie. And in the end, so you kind of live through it. You kind of live through it with the protagonist because the challenge is created where you are hooked in. Then you actually see him struggling, and then you see the resolution coming. Now, if actually a Bollywood movie were not to have, if you really ask me, all movies follow exactly this sequence, because all said and done movies are stories, and every story has precisely this. There is a challenge, there is a struggle, and there is a resolution. The only way you can sell effectively in today's world is to engage people in a story. It's extremely important that when you meet a prospect, instead of telling the person, let's say I was here to sell a soap, and if I come and tell you that listen, you go out every day and there's so much dirt that you gather that you need to have a shower. Now, I don't think that is going to appeal to anybody. I mean, everybody knows that is what a soap is used for. But how can I sell a soap in Bollywood style? Obviously, I need to create a challenge for the person that if you don't use my soap, if you don't shower with my soap regularly, what can happen to you? If that happens to you, what kind of struggle you're going to live through? And how using this kind of a soap, a medicated soap, how that is going to resolve all your problems? So this is selling in the new world, and I would highly recommend, there is what I've written here, Tell to Win, is actually the title of a book by a gentleman called Peter Grubber. And Peter Grubber was actually the leader, he was the CEO of Sony Pictures. So I recommend all of you to read this book. It's going to be it's a very interesting book. If you are in the world of selling, then I think you cannot move away from this Bollywood script of challenge, struggle, and resolution. And you need to be able to weave your product into a story which follows this sequence of challenge, struggle, and resolution, because that's the only way you can actually engage your customers better. So I think, like I mentioned, Peter Grubber is the author of this book, and Peter Grubber used to be the CEO of Sony Pictures. The next important point is that in the past, this is typically B2B in nature. I don't know what kind of industry we have all the audience here, but typically this is how a business-to-business selling happens. In a typical old-fashioned manner, there is a sales representative from one organization going and meeting the purchase manager of another organization. So typically, when a sales representative of a selling organization goes to the purchasing representative of a buying organization, these are the two people who keep contact, and all the departments who are responsible for creating the product and delivering the final product, they are all in the background. They have nothing to do with what is happening between these two people out here. They all are in the background, and the guys who you see here in the center, they are the ones who are acting more like postmen or like courier boys, taking the product and delivering it, taking money and kind of clearing payments, etc. Now, in the new world, typically speaking, if you see, you don't have a seller and a buyer dealing with each other and the rest of the people being in the background. Typically, what you have here is you have different teams working cohesively. So the project team from the buyer side and the project team from the seller side, they kind of work together. So what this shows is that right from the evolution of the product, I'm sure I'm getting some responses which say that the audience here is from the pharma segment. The example that you can take which is relevant to your industry out here is that instead of only medical reps meeting the doctors and understanding from them, and trying to give them the features of their medication and trying to explain to them what a particular drug can do for their patients. Instead of that, what this diagram actually shows is that right from the R&D, some of the R&D associates could also engage actively with hospital surgeons and doctors and engage them right at a developmental stage. So I'm sure these kind of initiatives do happen. But just to give you an example, in the olden times, selling was more about seller meeting buyer, whereas now it is more synergistic, and it's more about organizations engaging effectively with each other. Moving on to the last couple of slides, this is pretty interesting research. What it says is that typically speaking, when you take feedback, from customers on how do they decide, they typically speak about the performance of the product and they speak about the pricing. But when you actually do when we actually did a research on how do customers rate a vendor's performance, the most important features, the most important factors that were enumerated were product features and the sales experience. Now, when you look at overall sales experience, what it actually means is that what it actually means is that what kind of interaction do you actually have with the buyer? How have you ensured that your product actually relates with the requirements of the buyer? How can you indulge with him into consultative selling, in the sense that how can you customize the product to his requirements? How can you effectively capture his feedback for the future? So these are the kind of things which customers tend to value a lot more as compared to just the product features and the pricing. So this is the kind of output of the research. And typically speaking, what sales reps are expected to do, or where sales reps typically tend to fail, is basically it's not about being in touch with the customer. I think every salesperson knows that he should be in touch with the customer, but the real difference comes about when is more in terms of what happens after you meet the customer. So engaging with the client on a knowledge plank, being able to demonstrate benefits of the product, I think these are the more critical things. So net, maybe we are in the last 15 minutes or for questions. So net, what my learning, or net what I wanted to communicate to all of you is, if you really ask me, the recent trends, they actually suggest that we are depending a lot on technology to do relationship management for us. Interesting part is that technology is just a tool. Relationship management and selling actually happens on ground, and it's like an irony, but we are moving full circle, because 20 years back selling did happen on the ground. I think in the last 10-15 years there has been so much technological innovation that we all thought that selling happens because of technology. Selling happens online, selling happens on IVRs, selling happens in call centers. Whereas some of the research that I was able to present to you actually says that customers are still keen to the old-fashioned selling. The only difference being that in the past, selling was more about presenting information and presenting brochures, whereas now we live in the information age. Needless to say, all the information that we can potentially give to a client is already available with the client, and hence selling has become more consultative in nature. It's become more about helping people to decide. If you really go back and see, I think Tata Chroma is one brand which actually communicates, which says we help you buy, and I think that is interesting because selling is not about showing brochures and information. It is more about helping the client to buy. So quite ironic, but recent trends actually suggest that we get back to basics. So these are the few ideas that I wanted to share with you. I hope it is useful for you. I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah, so I'm happy to take questions now. Okay, so there is a question from Pankaj Sabnani that I'm answering first, which speaks about, don't you think with internet spreading its wings in India, people do their research? I'm sure everybody can read the question. And I completely agree with Pankaj, because the whole important point, the most important point is that, when you speak about internet spreading, and that's also what I mentioned, that nowadays before people make the buying decision, they've already collected all the information. Now, Pankaj, your question is very important, because when the client has already done his research and when the client has already collected all the information, then what is it that you as a salesman can do? Like I said at least 3 to 4 times during my talk, in the past, selling was about carrying the brochure and giving the information, because clients didn't have information. Whereas today, if you carry a brochure and go for a sales call, you look like a fool, because the client already knows what you're going to show him. So definitely there is a huge change in the way selling needs to happen. In today's age, you assume client has the information and you go ready with your comparisons of those information, your perspective on that information, and how all of that information is relating or not relating to the client's requirements. So selling is more about these kind of consultative and advice-based discussions rather than about product information. Okay, so there's a question from Yogesh Dhir. It says, what is the best way to engage clients for a long-term relationship? I think one sentence answer, you need to be seen to be his advisor. Do not come across, if you come across as a straightforward salesman, if you come across as a typical salesman who in every way is going to say that my product is the best, please buy my product, at least in my profession what I've learned, once in a while, you need to be having the guts to tell your client that, look, in this particular decision, don't buy my product, because I don't think that in this particular situation what you're looking for, my product is best. I think there are a couple of competitors who have better products. Like, I'll give you an example. I provide investment advice to a lot of people. That's my job. Forecasting which way the capital market is going is part of my job. There are a lot of times, and selling is also my job. And what do? I sell investment products. Now, if you step into my shoes, there are a lot of times when the stock market is really booming and a lot of people want to invest. Now, sitting in my chair, there are a lot of times I need to tell those people that, look, while the market is booming and it looks like everything is doubling, I don't think this is the right time to invest. Now, although I want that money to come to me, although I want the person to buy my product, there are times when I have to tell them that, look, I don't want you to invest now. This is not a great time. So, Yogesh, the important point is that if you come across as a salesman all the time, then you may have limited success. But if you come across as an advisor who once in a while actually goes out of your way to tell the client that, look, don't buy, I think that wins a lot of respect from the client. So I think there's a question from Adi, basic qualities of a good salesman. I think a lot of that I have answered. I think you need to be more consultative in nature. You need to come across as an advisor. You need to have technical qualification of the field. Do not talk about what is already written in brochures. Weave your own story around the information. Present things with a challenge and the sequence that I mentioned to you. I think those are very, very important. Challenge, struggle, and resolution. So there is a question from Jay which says, most business decisions are taken on emotion. Please elaborate. Okay. Like I mentioned in the presentation, when one organization deals with the other organization, nowadays it's a buyer's world. Typically speaking, buyers have a lot of choices and it's so competitive that most people have similar offerings. I mean, what is it? For example, today if you were to go and look for a car, in every particular segment, there are at least 4 options available. We have the best of brands in the world. Most of them have similar mileage. Most of them are in the similar price range. So what is it that actually makes the person buy A car versus B car? Why is it that all cars advertisements are emotional in nature? Why is it that all financial products advertisements are emotional in nature? Because we all know that the world is so competitive. When you are in sales, one thing you must respect. People can copy your product, people can copy your pricing, people can copy all your technical specifications. The only thing people cannot copy is your relationship relationship with your client, because you are you and the client is the client, and you are both uniquely wired, and there is a chemistry going out there. And I don't think that chemistry can be replicated by anybody. There is a question on how important is it to stick with one brand or organization. I think like I have been with ICICI, I think that is the secret of success. The longer you stick with an organization, I think you get more wired into the culture. I think you start becoming the culture itself. And you need to be with an organization till the time at least you are the culture of the organization, rather than you being just a participant in it. So the question on emotion I have already elaborated on. What if Aviva provides you better designation and career jump? No, I wouldn't move. From Sanjay Kaul, the McKinsey data says 35% of too much contact. Yes. Excessive follow-up with clients without adding any value to them. You know, you need to be, as a salesman, you need to understand does your client like dealing with you or not, and on what parameters he likes to deal with you. There are a lot of times, a lot of people who keep on following up with the client and keep on calling on the client and saying, please meet me and why aren't you buying from me? But they, you know, so they are very, very good and very, very diligent at the follow-up bit. But in that entire enthusiasm, sometimes people are highly motivated, highly enthusiastic. They go out and make 15 field calls. All that is very good. It's not about making 15 field calls. You must do 15 field calls. But every time you are in a call, what do you speak? That is most important. Okay, so it's not about excessive follow-up. Follow-up can be more or less that you need to gauge with your counterparty. But what is important is that when you enter the meeting and you leave the meeting, in between, what kind of ideas do you exchange, and how your product relates, or how your advice or how your service relates to the person's requirement is most important. What are the qualities of a good salesperson? I've already mentioned. Come across as an advisor, tell a story, weave a story around your product. Don't just give information and brochures. That's most important. Then there's a question from Mr. Ashok Dubey. With cluster of similar type information coming to customers, which may be the most prominent information for him to buy our product. I don't think that people, you know, I think most information is available either on the net or through brochures, or with a little bit of investigation. I think most information is available. I think the most important part for customer to buy the product is to understand how it relates to his requirement. I think that's the most important thing. You know, I'll give you an example of this, how a customer relates to a product. There was a point in time I was trying to buy a home theater, and I will not take names of brands, but you know which is the, you know, which company is known to be the most famous company as far as speakers and home theaters and 5.1 systems, etc. are concerned. And they make very good looking speakers. So when I was just about to buy the home theater from that company, and then there was another competing brand which actually came and told me that, look, when you're buying speakers, you're buying them for the sound, not for the looks. And that actually opened my eyes, because he said that speakers are such an item. If you look at the technology, speakers are such an item that the smaller you make the speaker, you know, a smaller speaker with a great sound output, yes, that is a technological innovation, but it definitely compromises the quality of sound. So the guy told me, and that made me buy his product. He actually told me that, look, when you're buying a speaker, your speaker is going to be mounted on the wall, high up there. How does it matter whether it takes 4 inches of space or 6 inches of space? So don't go for the looks, go for the sound. I mean, that was something which was an eye-opener. Normally, we all know we buy speakers for sound, but a lot of times people actually disorient you by giving all unnecessary information. So more than information, I think insight on usage of the product is most important. Okay, there's from Mr. Devrat Pandey, which says one-on-one dealing is more important. Yeah, that's the entire presentation that I'm making. I do agree it is very important. How much stress one should put to understand the client's psychology? I think you should do everything it takes to understand the psychology. Please throw some light on type of probing better in recent trends. I don't think that there is any textbook on how to probe a customer. And if there were a textbook on how to probe the customer, I would advise you not to read it, because every customer is different. You are a different individual. Every customer is a different individual, and it's no rocket science. You need to meet your customer quite a few times. We need to understand the background. A lot of times we get very puzzled by the choices which people make, whereas actually what they have gone through in their childhood, what kind of upbringing they have, what are their values, what matters to them, what doesn't matter to them. I think those are the things that one needs to understand. So probing is important, but I think it's a fine art. I don't think there is any textbook on that. Question is from Alpesh Parikh: how to make our products different as internet is spreading its wings? I think differentiating products, like I said, products get copied very fast. So differentiating with the basic product itself is quite challenging. I think weaving a story around your product and making it more salient for your consumer, that is most important. Like I gave the example of buying the home theater. Question is from Manish Mehrotra. Okay, no, so he's saying that relation and knowledge is important. I completely appreciate that. Relationship makes a lot of difference while buying a product. Yes, reputation cannot be copied. I completely respect that. I mentioned that relationships cannot be copied. Mr. Manish Mehrotra is sharing that reputation cannot be copied. That's very important. That goes with the brand, of course. What about ethics in sales management? Should the salesperson follow ethics, or should he just concentrate on sales? I don't think that this is there is no two ways about this. If you're not ethical, I think your customer will come back and will definitely find out. Over a period of dealing, we all have intuition, we all have our gut, we all have access to variety of information, and I don't think unethical selling can last long, because next the customer will use the product and he'll find out that he got cheated and he's never going to come back to you. And at least in my profession, I have seen, for example, that I work with ICICI. God forbid, for some reason, if I were not to work with this organization and work with another organization, ultimately I have to meet the same set of distributors, the same set of financial advisors. In your field, if you were to quit one company and go to another, ultimately you have to go back and meet the same doctor. Maybe you're just representing a different company, but the doctor will still remember you. So I don't think you can go far with compromising on ethics. Please, Satish Kumar is asking, please give your opinion on the process of engaging the customer in the form of feedback. How frequently should that be done? I think it's more need-based. I don't think there is any set frequency for engaging with customers. But my opinion on process of engaging the customer in the form of feedback, I think there is one thing you must keep in mind: a good salesman listens a lot more. And the only time a good salesman opens his mouth is to ask a question. Never speak more than your customer. That is my understanding. Never speak more than your customer. Let your customer do the talking, and the only time you open your mouth is to ask questions to understand the customer better. As far as the product is concerned, since you are sitting in front of the customer, the product has already been placed in front of the customer. When you are in front of the customer, try to understand his requirement rather than selling your product, because you and your product is already there. You don't need to, since you are already there, you don't need to sell that much more. How is price of the product important in the Indian market? I don't think it is about Indian market or any other market. I think price is definitely important, but I don't think price is the sole determining factor, because brand is important, performance is important. It's very simple. We always think that India is still a developing country, people in India don't have money, etc., etc. But the number of Apple phones and iPads we sell in our country is not funny. So I don't think, so that is the biggest proof that price is not the only important criteria. I think performance and brand and those attributes are very critical. So Mr. Upesh Soni has a question. If there are two products only and the quality difference by 10%, price difference is double, how to convince on the price base? I think a very important question. People will buy at a higher price if the salesman can give a good story. And by giving a good story, I don't mean in a derogatory sense. In fact, weaving a story around why your product is superior and why even at a higher price it will deliver more value. I hope you all know that there is a difference between the price that you charge and the value that you deliver. Huge difference. I may charge you 100 rupees, but the value I deliver may be worth 200. And what is the value? The value is the performance of the product. The value is the trust that you have with me. The value is the advice that I give you. The value is the brand that you perceive. The value is the pride that you get by using my brand. So there are many aspects of value, and I don't think that price is equal to value. According to me, you are a good salesman if you make the customer perceive that the value that you deliver is far more than the price that you paid. How to talk on the same product with the same customer every time? I don't think then you should be talking about the product, then you start sharing your experiences. I think that is more important. You can't talk about the same product with the same customer every time. I think it's most important that you share different experiences. It's important that you start moving to the next level and take his feedback on how to improve your product. You need to take feedback on how his clients are using how the clients are using your product and what are their experiences. You share your experiences of other clients, you make him share his own experience or her own experience and take inputs to develop the product further. I completely appreciate that you can't speak about the same product every time. But okay, let me tell you one interesting point. I'm in financial services, and in my industry, you have to speak to the customer about the same product every time, because if you take a mutual fund product or any investment product, the product is the same, but over a period of time, with performance of the market and with the way we manage, over a period of time, the performances and the portfolios, etc., keep changing. So in fact, in our industry, we keep talking about the same product all the time. It is just that the macro factors keep changing. So for your industry also, I'm sure that there are certain macro factors. So if it's the same product wherein a drug is being used, but in the environment, the kind of viruses that are floating, the kind of season that is there, the kind of diseases that people are catching, I think those things, the macro also needs to be discussed a lot. So very difficult to discuss same product all the time. Please discuss macro factors and please share experiences. The next question is on from Mr. Pradeep Dwivedi. 3 basic steps to start talking with customers. 3 basic steps to start talking with customers. I think it's not about 3 basic steps to start talking with customers. Actually, if you really ask me, it should be 3 basic steps about talking to anybody at any time. And you should read this book from Larry King. He comes on TV with this program called Larry King Live. I think it's discontinued now. But he has written a very interesting book which is about how to start talking to anybody at any time, at any place. And what he says is that when you want to start talking to someone, even to a stranger, by observing that stranger, you need to identify certain common points. It can be as simple as, okay, so you're wearing a watch like the watch I'm wearing, or something to do with something that the person is using, or something that the person is saying, or something that the person is reading. When you sit in front of a person on his desk, you can see so many things. That could be an icebreaker. So I think there are no 3 basic steps. I think the most important thing is that when you start talking to a person in the first 20 seconds, you need to be able to identify some common ground, something which is common between you and that person, and it better not be artificial. You need to come across immediately. From Suman Chakrabarti, there is a question on how to influence EQ of my customer and push him from satisfied to delighted customer. I don't think you can influence his EQ. The only thing you can use is your EQ can be used to your best, and hence you can delight your customer. Do we need to justify the quality of our product all the time? No, I don't think you need to justify the quality of your product. In fact, if you have to keep justifying the quality all the time, then there is something definitely wrong with the product. I think the quality of the product should come across in the way the consumer uses it and shares experiences with you. I don't think you can keep on justifying the quality of the product. Only relation works to sell with compromised quality. Answer is no. that if you only sell on relation and the compromise and the quality is not that great, you will have short-term success. But in fact, it will be counterproductive. In a matter of time, even your relation will fail. How to overcome policy-related objections in selling? I don't think, from your organization's perspective, I don't think you can overcome policy-related objections, but it is your duty as a salesperson that you explain to the customer why you have a particular policy and how that policy ultimately, if your organization can demonstrate that everything we do is in the ultimate interest of the customer. See, why do organizations make policies? Most of the times organizations make policies to curb their financial losses or to curb business risks. And a lot of business risks or compliance risks, regulatory risks. So a lot of these risks or a lot of these policies are ultimately formed so that the end customer doesn't get harmed. So your job as a salesperson is not to overcome policy related objections. The only way to overcome policy related objections is to put into perspective to a customer how that particular policy is ultimately made to safeguard the customer's interest. And if that policy is not safeguarding the customer's interest, then you as a salesperson definitely need to go back to your organization and give them feedback that look, this is how it's harming customers' interest, this is the feedback from the customers, and this is why I think you need to be able to resolve it. There is a very okay, so this is probably the last part that I'm taking on, but there is this very important thing. Selling is all about communicating, and there is a very important rule of communication. The important rule of communication is that if you have a problem and you want to communicate your problem, normally what happens is, if I have a problem with my wife, I speak to my friend, and the day I have a fight with my friend, I speak to my wife, and I think that is the most ridiculous thing to do, because I don't think my friend is going to go and tell my wife that she's an idiot, and I don't think my wife is going to go and tell my friend that he's an idiot. I don't think that will solve the problem. The only way to solve the problem, if you have a problem with your friend, the only way to solve the problem is to go and tell him why you have a problem and how it can be resolved and what he could have done better and what you did not like. So if you have a problem with relation to some policy, then I think you need to communicate it to your manager or to the person who formed the policy in your organization. You definitely get that explanation and you explain to the client how that policy is ultimately in client interest. If you don't get that feedback going between the client and your organization, and somewhere if you go back, I actually put it up in the chart out here. It clearly says that different, at your client's end and in your organization as well, the different parts of the organization need to work cohesively, and they need to sort and they need to look at the client's interest. If your client has an issue with a particular policy, the person who formed that policy in your organization needs to go and meet the client and explain to him why the policy was formed. So either the client will understand why you formed the policy, or the person who formed the policy will change the policy. At least one of the two things will definitely happen. Okay, I'm sorry, there are quite a few more questions, but I think we're running out of time. So I'd like to thank everybody. Maybe you can get my email ID and shoot your questions to me. I'm most happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you for listening me out. I'm going to put my email ID out here, and you can write to me in case if I can be any help to you. So that's my email ID. Feel free to write to me if I can take any more questions. Thank you very much. Thanks.